Have you ever wondered why prices are skyrocketing and goods are vanishing from shelves? The global supply chain is collapsing, and your wallet is taking the hit. In this video, we'll dive deep into the U.S. China trade war and uncover how it's reshaping the world, plus what you need to know to prepare. Welcome to a comprehensive deep dive into the escalating U.S. China trade war, a conflict that's upending supply chains, hammering retailers, and threatening economic stability worldwide. Ports are gridlocked, retail giants are scrambling, and consumers are staring down a cost of living crisis. With the latest statistics and expert analysis, we'll unpack the causes, consequences, and future of this economic showdown. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's confront this global crisis head-on. The US and China are waging a brutal economic war, and the world is caught in the crossfire. Trump's tariffs target $500 billion in Chinese goods, while China's banning US aircraft imports. Think it's just about trade? This is a high-stakes battle for global supremacy. Who's really in control? The US and China, the twin engines of global trade, are locked in a ferocious standoff that's shaking the foundations of the world economy. President Donald Trump's 2025 tariff blitz, slapping 35% duties on electronics, pharmaceuticals, and strategic technology, covers over $500 billion in Chinese imports, according to the U.S. Trade Representative. These tariffs aren't just policy tweaks. They're a deliberate push to resurrect American manufacturing and reduce reliance on China. But the cost is staggering. China's retaliation is swift and surgical. The Chinese government has halted deliveries of Boeing aircraft and banned imports of U.S.-made aircraft parts and equipment, a move disrupting $38 billion in annual trade, per the International Trade Administration. This isn't a mere counterpunch, it's a calculated escalation, signaling Beijing's refusal to bow to U.S. pressure. The port of Shanghai, the world's busiest, reports a 40% surge in stranded containers since January 2025, Bloomberg data reveals, as canceled U.S. orders pile up. Major U.S. retailers like Walmart and Target are slashing Chinese imports by 25%, Reuters reports, driven by soaring tariff costs and fears of further escalation. This panic is reshaping supply chains, with companies scrambling to find alternatives in a world still dominated by Chinese manufacturing. The U.S. is betting on protectionism to reclaim industrial dominance, while China is flexing its export muscle to protect its economic lifeline. Both nations are digging in, but the collateral damage is global. Europe, Asia, and even Africa are feeling the tremors as trade flows stutter. This isn't a trade war, it's a global economic earthquake. The roots of this conflict lie in years of simmering tensions. The U.S. accuses China of unfair trade practices, from currency manipulation to intellectual property theft, while China views U.S. tariffs as an attack on its economic rise. The stakes are existential. The U.S. wants to reassert its industrial might, while China aims to cement its role as the world's factory. As both sides escalate, the question isn't just who wins, it's whether global trade can survive the fallout. The global supply chain is crumbling under the trade war's weight, and no one's spared. Over 1.2 million containers are stranded at Chinese ports, and shipping companies are collapsing. Think it's just a logistics snag? This could trigger a worldwide retail and inflation crisis. The supply chain is the lifeblood of global commerce, and it's hemorrhaging. Canceled U.S. orders, driven by tariffs that have spiked import costs by 20 to 30%, have left 1.2 million 20-foot equivalent units stranded at Chinese ports as of April 2025, according to the World Shipping Council. This backlog is a direct result of U.S. imports from China plummeting 18% year-over-year in Q1 2025, with electronics, textiles, and consumer goods hit hardest, per the U.S. Census Bureau. Retail giants are in survival mode. Amazon, which relies on Chinese sellers for 40% of its marketplace, reports a 15% drop in their activity, with many hiking prices or exiting the U.S. market, per eMarketer. Chinese manufacturers, facing a 15% rise in labor and raw material costs, are refusing discounts, as evidenced by X-Posts and a South China Morning Post survey showing 60% of exporters holding firm. This defiance is strangling negotiations, leaving U.S. buyers with no leverage. The shipping industry is in freefall. Freight rates from China to the U.S. have crashed 25% due to excess capacity, Freightos data shows, while port operators are losing millions daily. Maersk, the world's largest shipping company, reported a 12% profit drop in Q1 2025, citing unprecedented container congestion. This isn't just a logistical hiccup, it's a systemic failure. Consumers are next in line, with the National Retail Federation projecting 2.8% price hikes on electronics, clothing, and household goods by Q3 2025. The ripple effects are staggering. Small businesses, reliant on affordable Chinese goods, are facing bankruptcy, with 30% of US-based Amazon sellers reporting unsustainable losses, per a 2025 Jungle Scout survey. Global trade flows are stalling, with the World Trade Organization warning of a 5% contraction by 2026 if the crisis persists. This supply chain catastrophe isn't just a headache, it's a global economic heart attack, and the prognosis is grim. Tariffs are the trade war's deadly weapon, and they're reshaping global commerce. New U.S. tariffs could spike smartphone and drug prices by 20 to 30% overnight. But it's not just about costs. China's defiance is pushing both nations to the brink. Tariffs are the spark that set this trade war ablaze. The U.S. administration's 2025 tariff hikes, ranging from 25% to 50% on $200 billion in Chinese goods, target strategic sectors: semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, defense technology, and consumer electronics, per the U.S. Trade Representative. The goal is clear: cripple China's dominance and boost American production. But the collateral damage is immense. Semiconductor costs could surge 30%, threatening price spikes for smartphones, laptops, and even cars, warns the Semiconductor Industry Association. Pharmaceutical raw materials, 80% sourced from China, face 10% price increases, per the FDA, risking higher drug costs for millions. Chinese manufacturers are fighting back with iron resolve. Facing a 15% rise in production costs since 2024, 60% of exporters are refusing U.S. demands for discounts, per South China Morning Post. Ex-posts from Chinese factories in March 2025 echo this sentiment, with suppliers declaring, "No discounts, no concessions." Some are resorting to desperate measures, like undervaluing exports to dodge tariffs. But U.S. Customs Service crackdowns have imposed $500 million in penalties in 2025, per CBP data. These violations risk heavy fines and reputational damage, yet suppliers see no alternative. The tariff war is a test of endurance. The U.S. is betting that higher costs will force companies to relocate production domestically. But rebuilding manufacturing could take a decade and cost $1 trillion per Brookings Institution estimates. China, meanwhile, is leveraging its export dominance to outlast U.S. pressure. This isn't just an economic standoff. It's a geopolitical chess match, with global trade as the board and consumers as the pawns. The longer it drags on, the higher the stakes. U.S. companies are fleeing China's tariffs, but the escape is a logistical quagmire. Southeast Asia's factories can't match China's scale, and costs are skyrocketing. Think this solves the crisis? It's spawning new risks that could cripple retailers for years. U.S. retailers are abandoning China in droves, but the pivot is a gamble with long odds. Tariffs have made Chinese goods untenable, pushing companies to Southeast Asia and beyond. Vietnam and Thailand report a 20% surge in U.S. import orders since 2024, per the ASEAN Trade Repository. But China's 40% share of global manufacturing output dwarfs their capacity, per the World Bank. Vietnam's production costs are 10 to 15% higher due to wages and shipping, McKinsey reports, forcing retailers like Target and Home Depot to plan 5 to 10% price hikes by late 2025. The logistics are a nightmare. Southeast Asia's ports and factories lack China's infrastructure, leading to delays and bottlenecks. Thailand's Lam Chabang port is at 90% capacity, per Port Technology International, unable to handle the influx. Political instability in the region adds another layer of risk, with trade analysts warning of potential disruptions in Myanmar and Cambodia. Retailers are trading one set of problems for another, and consumers will bear the cost. China's economy is reeling from the exodus. Exports to the U.S., worth $600 billion annually, are a lifeline, and a sustained drop could shave 2 to 3% off China's GDP growth, per IMF estimates. Beijing is pivoting to domestic consumption and belt and road markets, but these can't replace the U.S. overnight. Shipping companies are collateral damage, with empty containers piling up and freight rates plummeting. Maersk's 12% profit drop in Q1 2025 is just the start, analysts warn. This global pivot is a high-risk bet, and the house always wins. Consumers are the trade war's biggest casualties, and your budget is under siege. Everyday goods could cost 15% more by 2026, and product choices are vanishing. But it's not just your wallet. Innovation and competition are crumbling. Ready for the squeeze? The trade war's pain lands squarely on consumers, and the impact is brutal. Tariffs and supply chain shifts will drive 10 to 15% price hikes on electronics, clothing, and household goods by 2026, per the Consumer Price Index forecast. Electronics, reliant on Chinese components, could see laptops and smartphones cost 20% more, while clothing and household goods face similar surges, per the National Retail Federation. This isn't a blip, it's a new reality. Online giants like Amazon are reeling. Chinese sellers, who dominate 40% of its marketplace, are raising prices or exiting, per eMarketer. X posts from March 2025 show sellers sending apology emails to U.S. customers, citing tax-driven price hikes. Walmart's supplier diversification is causing delays and cost overruns, with store shelves already showing gaps. Less competition means higher prices and fewer options, eroding the retail edge that fueled Amazon's dominance. Consumers may turn to older devices or generics, stalling innovation. Tech companies like Apple are revising 2025 forecasts due to component shortages, per company filings. Retail sales growth is projected to slow to 2% in 2025, down from 4% in 2024, per the National Retail Federation, signaling a potential spending recession. Small businesses are collapsing, with 30% of Amazon's U.S. sellers reporting losses, per Jungle Scout. This consumer crisis could spark a broader economic downturn, and no one's immune. This trade war could redefine global trade, or plunge us into a global recession. Rebuilding U.S. manufacturing could cost $1 trillion and take a decade. But China's not backing down. Is this the start of a new economic Cold War? The U.S. is chasing a manufacturing renaissance, with the White House projecting 500,000 jobs by 2030, per a 2025 policy brief. But rebuilding factories could cost $1 trillion and take 10 years, per Brookings, and competing with China's low wages is a fantasy in the short term. China's Made in China 2025 plan counters with self-reliance in tech and pharmaceuticals, reducing U.S. leverage. Its belt and road markets could offset U.S. losses, but the transition is slow. Global trade could shrink 5% by 2026, per the World Trade Organization, hitting Europe, Asia, and Africa. Semiconductor shortages are delaying car and tech production, with Ford and Apple slashing 2025 forecasts. Europe's auto industry, reliant on Chinese components, faces a 10% cost increase, per ACEA. This trade war is a global economic time bomb, and the fallout could last decades. Both nations are playing for keeps. The U.S. wants to reclaim industrial dominance, but consumers will face higher prices and fewer choices in the interim. China's export-driven economy faces growth risks, but its domestic market and global alliances provide a buffer. The question isn't who wins, it's whether the global economy can withstand the shockwaves. This is a high-stakes gamble, and the world is watching. This trade war is rewriting the rules of global commerce. Tariffs, canceled orders, and gridlocked ports are symptoms of a deeper struggle for supremacy. The U.S. and China are locked in a high-stakes duel, but consumers, retailers, and the global economy are the real casualties. Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for updates, and let's track this unfolding crisis. The global trade chessboard is set, and the next move could change everything. It is set, and the next move could change everything.